Warner Brothers Discovery hit by $10 billion loss as Disney's streaming division posts its first profit. Basically, what they did is, you can see here, the company announced a net loss of $9.9 billion for the period, which included the $9.1 billion non-cash goodwill impairment charge from its network segment. Basically, what they said is goodwill impairment was triggered in response to, quote, the difference between market capitalization and in book value, as well as continued softness, giggity, in the US linear advertising market and uncertainty related to affiliate and sports rights renewals, including the NBA. Long story short, Warner Brothers used to have rights to the NBA. It looks like they're just going to completely lose those rights to distribute NBA games. And as a result, they don't think their channels and their TV business is worth very much. So they adjusted that on their books and said, oops, we're worth almost $10 billion less than we said we were 2-3 years ago, which is insane that can just happen, but that's just what happens. So they've done this thing called a write down in value. These are always really, really tricky. So for example, like right before this, people were joking about me being like a multimillionaire or something. I guess with all of this, it depends on how you define like net worth. For a lot of people, net worth is like total equity that you have. So if you own a house that's worth, say, $1 million, but you have a mortgage on that house for $900,000, you have $100,000 in equity. So if we're calculating net worth based on that, you could say, oh, well, it's worth $100,000, you're worth $100,000. Even though you have $1 million property, you're only worth $100. On the flip side, like that's how I think a lot of people generally try to refer to it. On the flip side, if you're talking about assets as your net worth, what you're looking at is a different equation. Then it would be like, well, you have $1 million house. Yes, you have a loan on it, but you have $1 million house. Also, like my YouTube channels are worth something, right? Like the main channel's worth something, the live channel's worth something, the TikTok page is worth something. Technically speaking, if I wanted to sell those channels, I could, and somebody would basically just buy the rights to the audience. And I don't think it works with the TOS. I don't think you can actually do it legally or without the channels getting deleted. But I guess technically you could maybe do a partnership. I know Linus Tech Tips said that he was offered about $100 million for Linus Tech Tips to be bought out, and then he would just continue making content, but they'd be owned by whatever company offered to buy them. So there's ways like that could happen. But I've also received offers from companies that effectively come in and offer you a big chunk of change. And then they're like, ooh, we'll get the exclusive rights to your back catalog. So you get the revenue from your videos for the first month that they're up. And then we get all of the revenue generated from everything else after that, which sounds really interesting. So long as your channel doesn't really grow or expand or anything like that. But it could be a nice way to get some initial cash, right? So like the channels are worth something, but I can't just go like selling a house and find a broker for YouTube channel, sell it off and move on, right? It's only worth what it is because I make the content here with my team. And so if we were to go away, it wouldn't be worth the same right or same thing. But by some metrics, if you take how much money these YouTube channels make and then extrapolate it out over however many years, you could get to the point where you could conclude that these YouTube channels are worth over $1 million combined for the exposure, for the ad revenue they bring in, sponsorship potential, the potential for them to grow and get even bigger. So in that way, you could sort of say, oh, well, Luke's a millionaire because he owns those YouTube channels that are probably worth more than $1 million. Okay, but it's not the same as me having $1 million in my bank account, right? That's the point. With this stuff, it's like you have a $10 billion TV business, but it's on their books claiming they're worth $10 billion in this goodwill, but it's not an actual like asset. You know, it's a goodwill impairment after the write down. So it's just messy. Like all of accounting on these big corporate levels are just kind of bizarre because it's like, yeah, the Warner Brothers Discovery TV networks are worth a lot of money, but they just get to kind of say, based on valuations they have from some independent groups and internal groups, they just get to kind of say, yeah, it's worth $10 billion. And then when they're wrong, you see it like this, where they adjust it and rewrite the number, and the number goes down by $9 billion. So it seems like this cataclysmic failure, but in effect, they didn't lose $10 billion in cash or something. They changed what they think something they own is worth, you know, and that's different. It's like if I just concluded that, oh, my collectible Elden Ring statue, I thought it was worth 500. Turns out it's worth just $5. I could say I lost $495 in that moment that I wrote it down, but I didn't really lose that money. You know, it's just not, it's not what it seems. So it sounds in some ways worse than it actually is. But without a doubt, no matter which way you look at it, Warner Brothers Discovery is in trouble. The company is run by, in my humble opinion, morons. And they don't know what they're doing. How they still have jobs is beyond me and beyond many, I'm sure, investors. I'm sure they can't be happy about it. But they have started talking about potentially selling off the rights to certain IP or basically licensing them. There's been some speculation they might sell their gaming division or they might sell off some studios. Whether or not that happens, I think is less likely, but I think they do most likely license out some of their IP that they can't make stuff for. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to hear that maybe they license out the Batman franchise to some other studio to make something. That would not shock me at all. But it's clear Warner Brothers doesn't really know how to reliably hit this. Like, in investor calls, they've said that they really want to push for live service stuff. They really want to make all of their main franchises that they own, all their main IP, they want to make them into live service games, whether it's mobile or console or PC, whatever. And a lot of people have gotten worried, including myself, that means that they're going to do that for something like Hogwarts Legacy as well, which is why I'm on the job listings for that information. So I get notified when they post a job listing. And they've not hired anybody for live service stuff for Hogwarts Legacy. It's all single player employees, like no mention of multiplayer, no mention of live service, no mention of battle pass, nothing, which is very good. And it makes me think that they're saying, yeah, we're going to push live service, we're going to push microtransactions, we're going to push all that stuff. But they understand, at least somehow and in some way, that Hogwarts Legacy was perhaps successful, at least in part, because of its structure, because of how it was set up, not as a live service money-making cow, but as just a solid product that people really wanted, and then it sold well. And I know that sounds like a ridiculous realization to have, but for some of these corporate bigwigs, like, that actually is a revelation. Wait, people just want a good game. They don't want to play a game that they feel has been custom built to take everything they have. We're onto it. We're onto something amazing. Again, such a simple revelation, but for some of these guys, it's like, they act like they had this revelation, then they're like, yeah, I need a $50 million compensation package for realizing this, please. It's ridiculous. Let's see, Kevin, you can take out debt on the future income stream. I doubt you, Luke, could sell the channel and move to a desert island with your millions. The value of the channel is tied up in your continued involvement. Yeah, exactly, Kevin. And that's why it's not as simple, I would argue, to just value the channels that way. Because for like a business, if I owned a towing company and it's like, oh, I sold my towing company, the new owner can just use my trucks, use my teams and my infrastructure, my customers, and continue operating the business and probably make just as much money as if I was actively involved. But if on the flip side, you're looking at something like a YouTube channel, it only makes money if I'm actively involved. So it'd be a weird thing where, like, I'd have to sell the rights to the channels, but still make content on the channels for a set period of time, in which case, why am I selling it? You know, unless maybe you're in like really dire financial straits or you have debt or something and you need cash on hand immediately. But even then, you can go get a personal loan or something. So it's tricky. There's no easy way to value a business. Because we've when I was doing taxes, like not for 2024 or for 2023, but for 2022, I met with my CPA and there was like some discussion over how we value the business and the YouTube channels and stuff. And they're like, yeah, it's not that simple because it's not a traditional business. You know, most actors, for example, or musicians, they value their businesses. Like Taylor Swift has a business of Taylor Swift Music Enterprises, whatever, that handles all of her stuff. But Taylor Swift Musical Enterprises is worth nothing without Taylor Swift. She can't sell it to somebody. She could sell her back catalog. Famously, Michael Jackson bought the Beatles back catalog. It's actually where most of Michael Jackson's money came from after his own records being sold in concerts. Most of his money and net worth was tied up in owning the rights to the Beatles music, which is just funny that that's how that works, but he just owned it. So that's how you do it. He took my thing. Red